PC, APHN, and expert member with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and NPCC. She is the founding member of the E-Hospice India and the former student representative for international students at Cardiff University. She has done 10 journal publications and her areas of interest are in advocacy, development of palliative care in armed forces. She has received numerous awards for her pioneering work in palliative care. With utmost pleasure, I would like to invite you, ma'am, for today's session, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Hashmat. And welcome to all the participants. Today, we will be talking about availability of opioids. I'm sure in the previous sessions, the other faculty would have discussed why opioids are important and why there is so much of need for palliative care, not only all over the world, but specifically in India and other developing countries, and what are the particular challenges that we face. So as we go along, we will be discussing a bit of these. At the end of the session, as usual, we will be taking questions and answers. Usually at the end of this session, there are many questions regarding practical problems. So please note them down and we'll take them one by one. So why it is important is because I'm sure you already know that 2/3 of advanced cancer patients and lots of non-malignant conditions like HIV, CHF, COPD patients, all of them have lots of moderate to severe pain, which affects not only their physical functioning, but also their family life, their social interaction, affects the community as a whole. It leads to existential distress, not only for the patient, but also for the whole family, doubles the risk of suicide in case of uncontrolled pain. And it's just misery for everyone involved. But the problem is that we take pain for granted. And even during our training, we just generally think that pain is just a part of the disease that the patient has to suffer. So it remains undertreated. It is not adequately recognized. It is not adequately assessed. And as a result, it is incompletely treated throughout the world. And in India, we have less than 4% patients getting proper relief. A lot of times the pain is due to the disease, but many times it is because of the disease and the treatment itself, and forms the entry point into palliative care for most of our patients. And there are many studies to show how difficult it is. Like one study was there which shows that oncology fellows fail to appreciate the severity of the problem in 73% cases. But there is no quantitative study that can convey the personal and the family tragedy that results because of this uncontrolled pain. There was another study in 2012 to 13 in 4 major cancer hospitals, which showed that though 88% patients came with pain, but almost 67% got inadequate analgesics. And though opioids have been on our national list of essential medicines since 2003, but the problems regarding availability still remain huge. And although pain relief is acknowledged as a fundamental human right, and it is said that pain relief, if we are not able to give that to our patients, it is as bad as torturing somebody. India is the legal producer. It is the biggest legal producer among all the countries of the world. But 6 countries of the world, and mostly Western countries, Australia, Britain, Canada, France, US, and Germany, they consume 80% of the world's morphine, and the poorer and developing countries, which have 80% of the population, they are able to get only 6%. And though it has been on the WHO's list of essential medicines since 85, our domestic consumption remains very little in spite of our heavy burden of patients. And there is a lack of demand because doctors are not trained to use it, and there is a huge fear of addiction. Also, the fact that till 84, the laws were very strict, very stringent, and they led to a lot of problems with the availability. There was a UN resolution in 2005 which said that medical use of opioids is indispensable for relief of pain, and that morphine should be available at all times in adequate amounts and dosage forms for all hospitals, and that any country with a low national consumption of opioids, it's a matter of great concern for all concerned. how concerned should we be in India? Now, this figure comes from the Pain and Policy Study Group, the University of Wisconsin, which shows that if you look at the graph, Australia, this is the per capita consumption of morphine. Austria is somewhere on the top of the graph. US is here, UK is here, and for India, you have to look really, really hard, and you'll find it somewhere at the bottom over here. Then this is another figure which was given by the INCB, that is the International Narcotics Control Bureau, which found that almost 80% of cancer patients have deaths with moderate to severe pain, and 50% of HIV patients die with moderate to severe pain. These patients require almost 679 milligrams of morphine in the last 3 months, but our actual use is only 0.4 milligram percent. So you can imagine the amount of uncontrolled pain we have. One big problem during the training in recent years has been our emphasis on cure. So much of medical practice has changed with its stress on diagnosis, investigations, that is, so that care is relegated to the background. And as a result of the fact that morphine has not been, opioids are not available for teaching, there is no stocking and dispensing in medical colleges and hospitals. So almost 2 generations of doctors have grown up without actually using morphines. So it is there sometimes in ICU, it is there in CCU, but use of injections in ICU and trauma is very different from the way we use it in chronic pain. Old NDPS rules were there. I told you they were very strict. So you needed a number of licenses for uh, transporting, for storage, for transport from one state to another. And there was so many departments were involved: government, excise department, revenue department, and this resulted in a lot of incoordination and difficulties. Also, the issues of cost. It is said by the UN, it has been said by WHO that it is obligatory on part of medical practitioners and institutions that we must have it in adequate form and doses at all times. But pharma companies are not interested because there is no profit. Morphine is a very cheap drug, and because of low profit, low demand, a lot of paperwork and bureaucracy involved, there's no profit to be made because of, especially because of low volume of demand. And as a result, this has resulted in pushing off expensive formulations at the cost of the cheaper drugs. If you look at the table on the side, it gives you a comparison of the cost of per day cost of the drugs. So at the time that I made this table, propoxyphene was available at rupees 1.92. Tramadol cost 16 rupees a day. Morphine is very cheap at rupees 5, and fentanyl more than 100. So if you have to get a patch of more fentanyl for 3 days, that packet which has 3, it's almost 1500 rupees, which is beyond the affordability of most of our poor patients. Supply of opioids limited only for a few days in many countries still, and long distances, repeated journeys, very difficult for sick patients. And patients, they have to stand in line from morning till evening to get a prescription. And if there is any spelling mistake, if there is any cutting, if there is any overwriting, they send the patient back to the doctor who is already overloaded, and it's very difficult for patients. So there is a lot of evidence for the safe use of opioids in chronic patients. There was a study with almost 12,000 patients, which was done at AIIMS New Delhi. And there was another study which was done in Kozhikode in 2001. And it followed patients over 2 years and found that there were no instances of misuse or diversion when patients were issued opioids for chronic pain. But you have to be careful in selection of patients, and you have to be careful with their follow-up. So as a result of all this, this is the background that I was telling you. So civil society in India took up the efforts to reform the laws and the policies required for opioids. And this resulted in amendment of the NDPS Act in 2014 and brought in the central balance of ensuring balance in the use of opioids was brought in so that it is adequately available for medical and scientific use. What are the main features of this modified NDPS Act of 2015? It has simplified the procedures for stocking as well as dispensing of morphine in institutions. It notifies certain drugs as essential narcotic drugs. There are 6 drugs, we will come to them. And it has made the uniform rules for all the states of India. There is only one agency in each state, that is the state drug controller or the food and drug administrator, who will recognize institutions where morphine can be stocked and dispensed. And this recognition, it's not a license. There is a difference between the two terms. So these institutions are recognized for 3 years. No longer multiple licenses are required. You need only one permission, one recognition from the state drug controller. Some important terms which have been used in this act, which we should know before we get our institutions recognized, is what are essential narcotic drugs, which are the ENDs. So these are opioids necessary for pain management, approved by the Drug Controller General of India, and these include morphine, methadone, codeine, hydrocodone, oxycodone, and fentanyl. And the term RMI, that is the recognized medical institution. Now, this is important. It is defined as any hospital, dispensary, clinic, or institution which offers diagnosis, treatment, or care of illness, injury, deformity, anything, which is either established or run by any municipal corporation, municipal council, Zilla Parishad. And again, this is marked in red, any person or body of persons. So this would include any kind of clinic, dispensary, or medical institution. Now, this can be recognized by the state drug controller for the purpose of purchasing, possessing, and dispensing narcotic drugs for medical and scientific purposes. And by definition, all government hospitals are deemed RMIs, provided they follow all the requirements of being an MRI. And we'll come to that. What is an RMI? RMI is any healthcare facility that can purchase, store, and dispense oral morphine. So it should have an officer in charge within the RMI who has been trained. So a doctor has to be trained, a doctor or a dentist. They should have a facility for safe storage of the drugs. A double locking system. Now, what is a double locking system? A double locking system is simply a locked cupboard in a locked room. It does not mean a cupboard with 2 locks and 2 keys like we have in the banks. It's not a locker system. Basic infrastructure facilities means safe storage of the drug, basic where somebody can supervise, a place to dispense, a place to keep a record. Enough staff for evaluating and managing patients. And you have to give proof of space and personnel for the record keeping. So they will ask you, when you send an application, they will ask you, who is the doctor in charge? What is his training? Who is the pharmacist who is going to be in charge? And what is the kind of facility you have? So they might even ask you for a map of the storage facility. So sometimes they ask you to send a map of your pharmacy. It's very simple. You just have to make a simple diagram of the floor space and send. Then a separate register has to be kept for record for consumption of each opioid. Now, if you have 4 or 5 different kinds, like you may have in your institution, injection morphine, tablet morphine, fentanyl patches, tablet codeine. So you need to have a record of all of these separately. Who can be a registered medical practitioner? Any person who is registered as a medical practitioner under Indian Medical Council Act. So either a doctor or a dentist, registered as a dentist, and who have also undergone training in the medical use of ENDs. So a doctor or a dentist who has been trained in palliative care can be a registered medical practitioner. And what is the process of recognizing the RMI? So this is a basic flow diagram that I have made. First of all is that you should have a doctor or a dentist trained in the use of ENDs. Then you apply for RMI status in the given format. After that, the state drug controller will send somebody for inspection. They will authorize your institution as a RMI. After that, you can purchase your drugs. This has to be done from approved manufacturers. You will get a receipt of that consignment. Then keep a record of the stocking and dispensing and file an annual return, after which you can apply for renewal of your RMI status after 3 years. But this annual return has to be filed every year. We will come to the each step one by one. First step is training. So once you have decided that you need opioids in your institution, please get a doctor or a dentist trained. After that, when you send an application from the side of the institution, the application format is Form 3F. Now, these are different forms which are given by the government, and uh, there is a whole set that we will be giving to you after this. So this PPT will also be there, and all those forms are also going to be there. So you just remember, you go through this PPT whenever you need to. Form 3F needs to be filled in. This is addressed to the state drugs controller by the authority in charge of the institution. So your MS has to sign. Sometimes the MS might be afraid of signing on anything asking for opioids. So it's very important to have a CME in your hospital and include your administrative staff and MS so that they understand this whole process and they have no qualms about signing the forms when required. So when you send an application, you will have to send details of the trained doctor, a copy of their degree, registration and training certificate in palliative care, along with the Form 3F. Form 3J is an annual estimate. They will ask you how much morphine do you require, how much codeine do you require. For that, there is a way of calculating, and there is a proper format in which you can ask for the amount of drugs that you need. You may want 2000 tablets. You have a bigger institution, you may want 6000 tablets, but that how to calculate and what to write, that is all given in these forms. Again, there's a covering letter. This has to be signed by the head of the institution, and a self-addressed stamped envelope for rupees 27. Now, I don't know why it is 27, but it is 27. After that, once the state drug controller has received your application, they will have a designated person who might want to inspect the clinic or the institution. And once they do that, they will authorize it as an RMI through a letter of recognition. Now, this has a time limit. They have to give you a reply and they have to complete this process within 2 months. That is 60 days from the receipt of your application. Please do ensure that before you send your application, this is a practical tip I'm giving you. Before you send your application, please do send somebody, or it's better that you go and meet someone in that office. Tell them why you want, make a social visit. So you have social contacts, get their contact numbers. And when you send your application, please follow it up. Tell your administrative staff to follow it up with the clerical staff in the state drug controller's office. Otherwise, it will never get done. Application will keep lying in a file. So please do have a social contact, get their numbers and follow it up yourself, or depute somebody, your pharmacist or your office staff, to follow up your application. Now, this authorization from the state drug controller comes in the format Form 3G, and they will tell you the quantity of ENDs that they have allotted for 1 year. They have to allow like 5,000, 6,000 tablets for 1 year. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot apply again. It just means that at any particular time, this is the maximum that you can hold. If you finish, you can ask again. However, if they do not give you RMI status, again, the reason has to be given by them within 60 days of the application. Once you get permission, once you get your letter of recognition, you can order your purchase of opioids. to the pharmaceutical agency you want. And these are listed at the website of the state drug controller. The list of approved manufacturers is there on the state drug controller website. So after they have sent it to you, they will send a note, assignment note. You will get it along with a copy of the format form 3C, which has details of consignment, how many tablets have been sent, from which manufacturer, which date, which is the batch number, what is the stock number, like they do for all drugs, that you will give. They will give you, and after that you receive it, keep a copy, keep the original, and a copy is given back to the supplier. I think this is the standard procedure for all drugs, especially in government hospitals. Now, how to maintain the records? All the records have to be maintained for 2 years from the date of last entry. Every day, have a record where you have to enter the diagnosis, details of the patient. Now, details of the patient should include name, address, diagnosis, Aadhaar card number, phone number of the patient. And if the patient has come for the drugs, then sign of the patient. If an attendant is coming, then take down the Aadhaar number of the attendant and get his signature of receipt of the drugs. A separate record of every patient is to be maintained in the format 3E, and you have to file a return for each calendar year on or before 31st of March in the format of 3I, and this is sent to State Drug Controller. What about private practitioners? People who have their own clinics, who are standalone, they may have small amount of opioids in their own practice without any special authorization. You can have up to 500 mg of morphine, codeine not more than 2000 mg. This is different for each drug, like I've put it down here for your reference. 2 transdermal patches of fentanyl 12.5 microgram or 25 microgram, one each of 25. And if you need more, you can apply with the form 3B to the state drug controller, and you can have it if they permit, but that requires a special permission, and this is valid for a period of 3 years. So when you buy these opioids, they have to be purchased from authorized chemists, like I told you. This is available with the state narcotic commissioner. ENDs have to be prescribed for selected patients only. And very importantly, they cannot be transferred, loaned, or sold to other institutions except with the written permission of the drug controller. Unused ENDs can sometimes be returned by the family. Now, if a patient dies and they have morphine which is left over, they can bring it back to the institution and the institution can receive them back. Just note down the number, the batch number, the details of those drugs, and take them as fresh receipts. Sometimes it is possible that you may take 2000 tablets, 3000 tablets. You don't have patients like it happened during COVID. The number of patients coming to the institutions dropped, and we had lots and lots of drugs that were not used. But what about ENDs? ENDs, if you need to destroy any expired medicine, it has to be done in the presence of an official designated by the State Drug Commissioner or FDA Commissioner. And it may be possible that in institutions, doctors come and go. So if your trained doctor RMP is going from the institution, any change is to be intimated within 7 days to the state drug controller. You have to send it in writing. And a new person comes in, so send their details and get this certificate reissued by the state drug controller. Now this is form DD12. This is called DD12. Now this is just to show that sometimes if we do not have opioids in our own institutions, then we can get it from a retailer. And there's a special format that we use. This is called DD12. This is how we fill in the prescription for getting opioids if they are not available in our institution or till they become available in our institution. The name of the patient, the drugs, how they are to be given, and the details of the doctor who is prescribing along with the registration number. All of these have to be given in detail. Recently, there was a change by the FCI which said that all the prescriptions should be in capitals. This was before that. Now, what we do now is try to write clearly in capital letters so it's more legible. But whenever we prescribe, this was another interesting paper from AIMS New Delhi, which talks about the circle of safety when prescribing opioids. So, first thing is total pain. Assess total pain. Not everything is responsive to opioids. Have trust of your patient. Create awareness in the patient, in the family, in your staff, in your administration, so that everybody knows about the need and the need for care while giving opioids. Train and empower your physicians and your staff. Tell them to be responsible when they are prescribing opioids. Availability, it's also part of our job to ensure that they are available, the drugs are available. Society has to be educated, policymakers need to be told, law enforcement agencies need to be told. And how to dispense these drugs safely. Our pharmacy staff, our nursing staff, they need to be trained. If patient is in home care, then home care teams and the families need to be trained, and everything has to be done under supervision. Idea is the patient should have total pain relief, and follow up is important. Record keeping is very important. But it's a very, very good, very effective, very safe drug. And record keeping is just as important in other drugs as well. It's just that sometimes we don't do it so carefully. For opioids, we have to do it carefully. And we must remember that strong opioids exist to be given, not merely to be withheld. Morphine, it remains the gold standard for pain relief in severe cases. It has been used for so many years now. It's been shown to be safe, it's effective, it's cheap, and safe, yes, if given by trained people in proper manner. And we have to give it according to the severity of the pain, not the stage of the disease. So sometimes we may think that patient abhi to bahut early hai, patient may need it later, and patient insists that he's got severe pain. Please remember, patients even in early stages of disease can have severe pain, and sometimes after treatment, after radiation, after surgery, the pain may go down. So he may not require that opioid. And also that it's very important to make available normal release morphine in your institutions before making available the other more expensive formulations. But what happens practically? In every regional cancer center and medical colleges, you will find that oral morphine is not there, and fentanyl is easily available. Everybody likes to write fentanyl, whereas fentanyl is a second line drug. It's not the main, it's not the primary drug. So it's a good drug in cases where patients are not able to take orally, but we must always start with normal release morphine. So we have to make available normal release morphine because fentanyl and morphine are both governed by the same NDPS rules. What happens is you look for normal morphine, you won't find, and for fentanyl, the MR will say, "Oh, hame patient ka ghar bata do, where it is, we will deliver," because the profit margins are more. So what do we do about it? What do we do about increasing opioid availability? We have to make, as I said, awareness for health professionals, patient, policymakers, police organizations. Integrate this awareness into all levels of care. It is not just for tertiary care. It is equally important for primary care. It's equally important for secondary care. It's equally important for all branches. It's not just oncology. It is not just cardiac. So please remember to put this thing for your gynae colleagues. Gynae oncology is important. Orthopedics, very important. Pediatrics, ENT, dentistry, it's so important in all branches. And networking. Networking is so important when you need help from families, you need help from NGOs for home care, you need help from geriatric patients, for them, you need help from HelpAge India, you need help from whatever organization, Red Cross, or whatever NGOs are working in your area. You know, we cannot do home care without help of NGOs in the existing scenario in India. So networking with them is so important, and education and training. What we are doing right now is part of it, but it doesn't end here. Each and every one of you who is trained has to go into the periphery, into your institutions, and help train more people, at least make them aware of this particular branch and why it is important. And research, last but not the least, research, creating evidence for our own country, for the places that we work in. See, each population is different. So in the east, things are different from what they are in the west. Down south in Trivandrum, it is very different from where I work in Tripura. So we need evidence for this particular group of population where we are. And when we work, there is so much of research work that we can do. Tie up with your institutions, tie up with local medical colleges, help the PGs do research on subjects related to palliative medicine, and create evidence for your country. So, as the Dalai Lama says, we should be wisely selfish. Whatever you do comes back to you, and we are all going to die in the healthcare system tomorrow that we are going to help create today. We need people who are going to take care of us when our day comes, and we need opioids to be there for ourselves, for our friends, for our families, for our dear ones when they need it. And for that, we have to work now. We are preparing the ground, we are sowing the seeds, and we may see the results 15 or 20 years later. So be wisely selfish, teach others about palliative care, and help opioids to be available in your institutions and in your communities. Thank you very much. And if we have any questions, we are going to take them now.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have your questions in the chat. I can read it out for you. So the first question is, which opiates are to be compulsorily be kept in the fridge that is cold temperature?
Oral tablets are kept normally at like all drugs are kept at normal room temperature, away from heat and humidity. They do not have to be kept in the fridge. But yes, injections we need to be careful about. For each drug, you know, the instructions are there on the label. So without going into each and every detail here, I will just recommend that for each drug, take a note of whatever is there on the label and do accordingly. Then another is, are homeopathic and Ayurvedic doctors, BMS, BHMS allowed to prescribe? Is that the question? Yeah? No.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
No.
yes, ma'am. Yes.
No, they're not allowed because their system doesn't teach about opioids. Ayurveda doesn't have opioids. If we have any Ayurveda person here, can they help me with this? But as far as my knowledge is concerned, they're not allowed. That is one reason we are not able to take BMS for CCPC courses, for the certificate courses that we do, both with IPC and with Pallium. But there are so many other things that they can help with, you know. If we are talking about palliative care, then palliative care is so much more than just opioids. So there are things that they can use within Ayurveda for pain relief. And they can help us with the other three parts, you know, the psychological, emotional, spiritual, and using their own drugs for the relief of the patient. See, I am in allopathy, so I don't know how Ayurveda works. And I cannot comment on that. But what I'm saying is there are many things within Ayurveda that can be used for chronic pain, that can be used for other symptoms which we have in our patient population, and we can work together to bring relief to the patient. So opioids, like, you know, for oncology, there is always a team, and we take the help of oncologists. We take their guidance for so many other things which are required by the patient. See, concept of palliative medicine is multidisciplinary team. So yes, they can make very useful members of that multidisciplinary team, but prescription of opioids, I think, is beyond the limits of Ayurveda. So they can give their own medicines for chronic pain. Is it okay? Somebody who had asked this question. Dr. Nandini, is it clear?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So then another question is, what if the institution already has authorization for some opioids like morphine, fentanyl patches, but now we want to dispense buprenorphine or hydromorphone, etc. too? Do we need another authorization? No. No, but you will have to get that limit, you'll have to write a letter and get that authorization of that particular drug, the maximum quantity that you have. Go back to the PPT, read the form concerned with the authorization of that particular drug and just write to them that we are already an RMI and we need to stock these many, say 400 hydromorphone, 500 hydromorphone and 1000 buprenorphine. Just inform them. But you don't need to go through that whole process again.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
Anything else? That's all. So we will be sending you this PPT and we will also be sending all the forms. Hello. Yes, Dr. Hashmat. Sorry, I think I came in between while you were saying something.
No, ma'am. I was just asking if there are any more questions so that we can take.
So when nobody asks anything, we generally think that either they've understood everything or they've not understood anything.
We have understood, madam.
Understood. Basically, this process one understands only when you actually go through that whole process practically. So you will need to go back to this PPT again and again and see which forms are required now, read those forms, get it done. So actual problems arise when you ask your MS to sign and he says, no, why should I sign on the opioid form? I'm not going to sign, you sign. Then they have to be shown that, see, this is the regulation. We need you to sign. I'm signing, but you have to sign with me. So all those things create a problem. So, but one thing I would like to add here, that Pallium India is doing this training, but Pallium and Indian Association of Palliative Care, of which Pallium is a member, on behalf of IPC, I'm just putting this forward that whoever faces any problem regarding opioid availability, there are doctors in each state who have done it. There are people who are working for opioid availability in each of the state, and there are zonal representatives both from Pallium and from IAPC. So if you people face any problems practically regarding this, please get in touch with them and we will ensure that whatever practical issues are there with the state drug controller or with the administration, we will try to assist. So either through Pallium or IAPC or through both, you can approach anybody you want. So we are all there. It's not just like during the training we are here, not just as faculty, but also for making sure that once you go back to your institutions, you're actually able to get the services in place. So idea is that. So shall we call it a day then, if there are no more questions?
Actually, ma'am, this is not regarding the availability of opioids, but I had a query that in case the opioids are given to the patient at home and the administration, there is some problem with it and something unforetold happens, then who is held responsible? Like, because I suppose that's why those guys are not agreeing to sign the forms, because they shouldn't be held legally accountable.
So there are two parts of this question.
Yeah.
First is that the person has to sign for making opioids available in the institution.
Correct.
Okay, the MS has to sign the letter when you are sending your application to the state drug controller. See, everything that one does within the institution, whatever purchases are made, are done on behalf of the head of the institution. So as store in charge, whatever I do is on behalf of that person. Ultimate responsibility lies with the head of the institution. So it's imperative for them to understand this whole process. If they don't know that this is the regulation, this is required by the government, if we simply take the form to them and sign, sir, aap sign kar do, he will not want to do it. So that's why I said, before you start doing all this, please have a CME, have a seminar, invite some senior members even online, and make your administration understand the process of purchase or getting RMI status, so that tomorrow when you take these letters to them, they will not have a problem. Second part is, who is responsible if something goes wrong? When I'm prescribing, I'm responsible for whatever happens to my patient, but at the same time, we do not do patient selection randomly. We are careful about whom to prescribe opioids. When we start opioids, we keep the patient under observation. We keep them in daycare, or we admit them for 2 days,
All right.
titrate the doses, and then send them home. And as it is, palliative care population is always a frail patient, towards terminal or already bad, or every patient can, even the paracetamol can cause a complication.
No, that's true. But
So for opioids, we are scared because we are not familiar. And the thing is that patient selection has to be done properly. And that is why I keep saying that trust building is important with the family and with your administration, so that if tomorrow something happens, they should not be pointing fingers. And we have to explain, it is an informed thing when they are coming to you taking drugs. It is an informed thing. We have to tell them, see, we are giving this medicine to your patient. Patient may have sleeping, there may be sedation, there will be nausea and vomiting for a week. So we have to explain each and every side effect that occurs with the opioids. And we give them contact numbers to come back to us in case of a problem. Yeah. So that trust has to be there before we send these patients home with everything.
so in the beginning, you admit the patients for 2 days till they stabilize on a dose, and only then hand them over the opioids to take.
Of course, once we start opioids, we have to keep them under observation, titrate the pain relief, make sure that they are okay, explain the side effects, give instructions in writing. I'm sure there will be, if there has already not been a separate session
the
on
instructions
give
have been-
opioids practically, I'm sure there will be. And they will be explaining all these things. So for patients who are in home care, we give them written instructions in language they can understand. And we also give them a contact number. They can get back to us in the middle of the night if they need to. But again, it's important for the trust factor to be there.
But that's true. But no, so what you're saying is that the first few doses have to be under supervision of the doctor.
Of course.
Under admission, and then only you give allow them to take at home.
Or at least under observation. I won't say admission in all cases, but sometimes we keep them in daycare, start the medicine, patient is okay, we send them and call them again next morning if they live nearby. But if they live far away, then it's better to admit it.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
You have to find out what is the best thing under your circumstances. You may be a standalone clinic and you may not have facility for admission. Then we have to find out where he can be kept close by, where we can observe at least.
Yeah. Okay. That's clear. Thanks. Yeah.
So Dr. Hashpat says, I'm facing a network due to heavy rain. So that's okay. That's okay. Pallium is here. The main person from Pallium is here. We can coordinate. That's okay, Hashmat. So is that okay? Can we close now?
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yep.
What I want to ask is, for home visit, when the patient is at home, opioids cannot be given or prescribed. The patient is unable to get admitted.
That is okay for you. If you have a home care team which is regularly seeing the patient, then they have to see, sometimes what happens is we are seeing the patient over the last 5 months, 6 months, we are going every day. And it is possible that it's a small village, patient lives nearby. There is always the possibility, of somebody going and visiting, but generally observation has to be done. When you start opioids, observation has to be done.
Means under the supervision of nurse.
And then you have to find out each patient is different, each case is different. But what I'm saying is whenever you start opioids, it has to be under supervision, whether it is supervision of the doctor, whether it is supervision of the home care team. Home care team may have a doctor, may not have a doctor, but if you're available on phone, I think still, even if it's a home care team, then you have to start opioids under supervision of the nearest person. Don't start opioids
Supervision
without.
means doctor cannot be there for 24 hours.
But
Doctor
I
will just
understand that.
prescribe.
I understand that. What I'm saying is that when you start for the first time, it is better to call the patient. You have to make sure the patient is there, because sister is not prescribing, sister is only giving. So you have to prescribe, you have to see the patient, you have to assess. There are so many things that you have to assess when you start opioids. Renal function you have to see, liver function you have to see, weight of the patient, general condition of the patient, that we cannot do unless we see the patient. So have the patient come for the first time, keep them for 2 days or call them again in the morning for the first 2 or 3 days. And once patient is stable, next time, or once patient is stabilized, then you can prescribe. Even otherwise, attendant can come and collect medicine, or the home care team can come give the medicine.
But while the patient is at home and taking the continuous prescription medicine, that time also the nurse has to see the patient.
It's okay, that's okay. But first time, what I'm saying is when we are starting for the first time, then we have to make sure that we have seen and assessed and then started slowly. Once patient is stabilized, they can go on for months together. They may be taking opioids for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. And it's okay. The home care team knows patient is stable. They go and see. And after that, you can give the prescription.
But what for even for tablet morphine, oral morphine also? Patient has to be admitted in the hospital?
I'm not saying always admitted. I'm saying observe, either in daycare, call them, see them, keep them there with you, send them back at night, call them the next morning, but do observe for the first 48 hours. And
Even
best if
for
you can
tablet
keep.
morphine?
Yes. Best is that.
Okay, thank you.
It is the ideal thing, but then you have to work out for each patient differently. Sometimes even if we send them home, we are in contact over video call. Something goes wrong at night, I'm there. See, what happens is, like, if I'm in a campus, so if I have a patient here, I'll call them in the morning, see them, and I'm right here. Patient is there in the hospital, that's okay. But if patient is coming from a place 200 kilometers away, he cannot go and come back again the next morning. He has to be there for 2 days at least with me. Learn all of these things when you actually start prescribing and do your practical part of the training. So does this course have a practical part also, Shripriya? No? Is it just a sensitization course?
This foundation course?
Yeah.
Actually, participants do have an option of getting advanced hands-on training after this. So those who wish to take this palliative medicine seriously in their career, they can definitely advance to the hands-on training after this, once they get certified.
Yeah, so what I would strongly advise is that please, before you actually start prescribing yourself, if you find it so interesting, then you must get practical training and only then start. 10 days practical training is very important. Only then you should start prescribing. "48 hours follow-up is needed for oral morphine." And then, yes, even when you titrate dose. Yeah, follow-up is always important. When you are changing the dose, follow-up is important. And please do get practical training before you actually start the work. It's good to know about it. So if you have a patient and you're not familiar with the opioids, then better to refer to a person who is familiar. You can do the follow-up, but even referral is important. If you can't do it yourself, if I'm not a gynecologist, I'm referring a patient with CA cervix to somebody who can treat her. It's just as important. Timely referral is very important. Same holds true for pain management also. We may not be able to do everything ourselves, but we may refer to the right patient, to the right person, and that's also very important. But if you plan to start, do your practical training, please. Record keeping, titration, side effects, these all we understand only when we do it practically. So thank you. Thank you very much. I think we are done with the questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Yes,
you.
so if there are no more questions, we can close the session for today. Thank you, Savita ma'am, for such an interesting session and for answering all the questions also. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Savita, for joining us. I do know personally that you had a hurry-burry day. You joined us in between your busy schedule. Thank you so much for joining and enlightening our participants regarding the opioid availability. And thank you everyone for joining in. So the next session is going to be our last session in this foundation course. So I'm hoping that the entire journey was a fruitful mutual journey of learning. This is Sripriya along with Mr. Anu, Dr. Savita Butola and Dr. Hashmat Farhana signing off from the Tips Eco Hub. See you in the next session, the last session of our course. Till then, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.